I'm not beautiful enough, wept native woman. Rancher held her, your only beauty, my heart waited for. The sun rose slowly over the wide open plains, painting the sky with soft shades of pink and gold. Lena stood by the wooden fence, looking out over the fields that had been her family's for generations. The air smelled of fresh grass and earth, a scent that should have made her feel at home. But today, like most days, a heaviness rested on her shoulders, a quiet feeling she couldn't shake. She tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear and sighed, staring at the distant hills. They seemed so far away, like a place she might never reach, not just physically, but in life. Lena had grown up in this small town, a place where everyone knew everyone else's business. She loved the calm of the fields, the way the wind danced through the tall grass, and the simple rhythm of life on the ranch. But she had never loved herself the way the world expected. She often compared herself to other girls in town, the ones who seemed to shine effortlessly, drawing attention wherever they went. She would watch them laughing in the schoolyard or at the town fairs, their faces bright with confidence, and feel a sharp pang in her chest. I'm not beautiful enough, she whispered to herself, her voice almost lost in the wind. It had become a kind of private truth, one she didn't share with anyone. She tried to tell herself that it didn't matter, that there were other ways to be important, to be loved. Yet every glance in a mirror reminded her of what she felt was missing. Lena's eyes were kind, her smile gentle, and her heart big, but she couldn't see those things as beauty. To her, they were ordinary. She walked slowly toward the barn, her boots crunching softly on the dry dirt. The morning was busy, and there were chores to do. She fed the chickens, brushed the horses, and checked on the cows grazing in the pastures. Her hands were rough from work, her arms sun-kissed from hours under the open sky. These were the routines that kept her grounded, the tasks that reminded her she was useful, even if she didn't feel truly noticed. As she worked, Lena thought about her family. Her mother had always been practical and kind, teaching her to be responsible and independent. Her father had passed away when she was young, leaving behind a quiet strength in the land itself, a legacy of care and patience. Lena tried to live up to that legacy, to honor it with every task she completed. Yet, even in her own family, she sometimes felt invisible, like she blended into the background while the world moved around her. The small town had its charms. There were markets where neighbors exchanged goods and stories, a river where children swam in summer, and a little schoolhouse where generations of families had learned their lessons. But beauty and popularity were often measured by things Lena didn't possess: a perfect smile, a certain style of dress, or a sparkling confidence. She didn't hate herself for it, exactly. She just wished she could see herself the way others seemed to see themselves, with pride and certainty. One morning, as Lena was tending to the horses, she noticed a few kids playing by the edge of the field. They were laughing and chasing each other, their voices carried by the wind. For a moment, she remembered when she was their age, carefree and full of dreams. But growing older had brought self-consciousness along with responsibility. She had learned early that the world could be harsh, that people judged quickly, often without knowing the heart behind a face. She had learned to protect herself by staying quiet, by keeping her dreams close to her chest. Despite her inner struggle, Lena had small moments of joy. She loved the way the light fell over the pastures in the early morning, the way the horses nickered softly when she approached, and the sound of wind through the trees. She found comfort in the patterns of nature, in the simple certainty that the seasons would come and go, no matter how she felt about herself. Sometimes she would close her eyes and just breathe, imagining a world where her worth wasn't measured by looks or attention, where she could be appreciated simply for being herself. Even with these small comforts, the feeling of inadequacy often returned in quiet moments. Standing by the river after chores, Lena would watch reflections ripple across the water and wonder why she didn't feel the way she wanted to. Other girls in town seemed to shine effortlessly, while she struggled to even see her own reflection as anything special. She knew that beauty wasn't just about appearance, but confidence and spirit too. Yet, confidence was something she felt she lacked. She felt shy around others, unsure of how to speak, how to carry herself, how to show the world who she really was. The truth was, Lena longed for connection, someone to notice her not for what she lacked, but for who she truly was. She dreamed of meeting someone who could see the kindness in her eyes, the honesty in her heart, and the strength in her hands that worked tirelessly every day. But she kept those dreams secret, tucked them away like fragile flowers she was afraid to show. She had been disappointed too many times before, and the fear of being misunderstood or ignored was stronger than the hope of being seen. Even so, the ranch had taught her resilience. Every morning brought new tasks, new responsibilities, and new chances to prove to herself that she mattered. She would feed the animals, repair fences, and carry heavy buckets of water, all while carrying the quiet weight of her thoughts. And every evening, when the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky with fiery reds and soft purples, she would pause and let herself dream again. She imagined a life where someone might look at her and see beauty, not the kind measured by mirrors or town gossip, but the kind that comes from love and understanding. One evening, Lena sat on the porch of her family home, her legs dangling over the edge. The wind ruffled her hair, and she listened to the distant sounds of the town settling down for the night. She thought about the girls she saw in town, laughing and confident, and she whispered again, almost like a prayer, "I'm not beautiful enough." But this time, there was a faint spark of something else. Hope, perhaps, or curiosity. Somewhere out there, she thought, there might be someone who could see beyond what she thought were flaws, someone who could recognize the beauty she could not yet see in herself. That night, Lena went to bed with the familiar mix of sadness and longing. And as she closed her eyes, she held on to a tiny, fragile hope. She didn't know what the future would bring, or if anyone would ever see her the way she wished to be seen. But for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to imagine it. She imagined a kind face noticing her kindness, a gentle voice speaking to her heart, a moment where she might feel truly seen. And though sleep came slowly, it brought dreams of a world where she was not invisible, a world where her heart could be held and her worth recognized. The next morning, the sky was pale blue with streaks of sunlight brushing the edges of the clouds. Lena rose early, as she always did, the smell of dew and fresh earth filling her senses. She tied her hair back, pulled on her boots, and stepped outside to start her chores. The fields stretched endlessly before her, calm and quiet, as if waiting for her to walk among them. She carried her bucket to the barn, thinking about the work ahead. As she rounded the corner near the pasture, she noticed a figure in the distance. A man was leaning over the fence, watching the horses with careful attention. Lena froze for a moment, unsure who he was. He was tall, with a wide-brimmed hat and a sun-worn jacket, carrying himself with a quiet confidence that made him stand out against the empty field. She hadn't seen him in town before, and curiosity prickled at her. The man straightened and waved lightly. "Morning," he said, his voice warm and steady. "I just moved over to the Miller place. Name's Ethan. I'm trying to get to know the land and the animals." Lena nodded politely, her hands gripping the bucket a little tighter. I'm Lena. I live here. That's our pasture. She tried to sound calm, but her heart beat a little faster. Meeting someone new always made her nervous, even in her small town. Ethan smiled, tipping his hat. I hope I'm not intruding. I'm just trying to learn a few things. Maybe you could give me a hand sometime? There was something easy about his manner, something that didn't make her feel judged or small. Lena hesitated, then nodded. I I can show you a few things if you want. She tried to keep her voice steady, but the surprise of the encounter made her a little shy. Over the next few days, Ethan appeared often at the edges of her chores. Sometimes he would be repairing a fence near the field, other times checking the water troughs for the horses. Each time he greeted her with a simple, friendly smile, never imposing, never overbearing. Lena noticed little things about him: how carefully he handled the animals, how patient he was, how he seemed to notice details others would miss. One afternoon, while she was brushing the mane of her favorite horse, she caught Ethan watching from a distance. He waved, and she felt a small, unfamiliar flutter in her chest. She lowered the brush and called out, "Do you need something?" "Just checking on the horses," he replied. "They're healthy." "You're doing a good job with them." Lena blinked, not used to receiving praise. Her cheeks warmed, and she looked away, pretending to focus on the horse. She was unused to attention like this. Most people in town had ignored her, overlooked her, or whispered about her quietly. Ethan's words felt honest, unforced, and it made her heart beat in a way she hadn't expected. Over the weeks, their encounters became routine. Ethan would stop by during chores or on his way to his own ranch, offering tips or simply chatting about the land. Sometimes they would work side by side, repairing fences or mending broken tools. Lena found herself laughing at his light-hearted jokes, the sound surprising even her. He had a way of making the long, quiet days feel lighter. But still, Lena held back. She was used to hiding her feelings, used to keeping her insecurities close. Even though she found herself drawn to Ethan's warmth and kindness, she kept her heart guarded. Every compliment he offered made her smile, but also reminded her of the thoughts she carried. I'm not beautiful enough. I'm not worth the attention. She wondered if he would ever truly see her, beyond the shy girl with rough hands and dusty boots. One late afternoon, the sky painted with golden light, Lena was fixing a broken fence post near the far pasture. Ethan approached quietly, carrying a hammer and some nails. "Mind if I help?" he asked, his eyes kind. Lena hesitated for a moment. She was proud of her independence, used to doing things alone. But there was a gentleness in his voice that made her want to accept. "Sure," she said softly. They worked together in companionable silence at first, each focused on the task. The boards were heavy, the nails tricky to place, but Ethan's steady hands guided the work. Lena noticed how he didn't rush her, how he offered a hand without taking over, and she felt a little of her tension ease. For the first time in a long time, she felt that maybe someone could see her efforts as valuable. "Why do you work so hard?" Ethan asked suddenly, looking at her. Lena paused, wiping sweat from her forehead. "I don't know. I guess I just like to take care of things. I like seeing them safe, healthy, happy. It feels right, I guess." Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. Ethan nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "That's rare. Most people just rush through life. You notice what matters." The words made Lena look up at him, her heart tightening. They weren't about her appearance or how she looked in town. They were about her. Something deep inside her stirred, a mix of hope and caution. She smiled faintly, feeling her chest warm. "Thank you," she said softly. As the days turned into weeks, Lena found herself anticipating Ethan's visits. Sometimes he would appear just to watch the sunset with her over the hills, or to share a quiet laugh over a minor mishap with the horses. Their conversations were small, ordinary, but they carried a weight Lena had never known. He asked about her life, her family, her dreams, never rushing, never prying too much. One afternoon, as they sat by the river, dipping their hands into the cool water, Lena spoke more than she had in weeks. She told him about her life on the ranch, her responsibilities, and even her quiet fears about not being noticed or valued. Ethan listened, nodding, never interrupting. His eyes were calm, steady, and patient, and Lena felt a strange comfort in them, like he was offering a safe space for her heart to speak. "You know," he said finally, breaking the silence, "I've seen a lot of people in my life, and I can tell you something. There's a beauty in you that no one else notices. It's quiet, strong, and real. I hope you see it someday too." Lena's hand stilled in the water. She had heard compliments before, but something about his words was different. They weren't flattery. They weren't the empty words people threw around. They were honest, and they touched a part of her that had long been silent. She felt a mix of gratitude and fear. Could she believe him? Could she believe anyone? For the first time, she allowed herself a tiny spark of hope. Maybe she wasn't invisible. Maybe someone could see her, really see her, for who she was, not what she looked like. She glanced at Ethan, who was watching the ripples in the water, unaware of the storm of feelings he had stirred inside her. She wanted to tell him how much his words meant, but the shyness she had carried all her life held her back. Over time, the bond between them grew, quiet and steady. Lena began to notice little changes in herself. She smiled more freely, laughed more often, and even felt a lightness in her steps as she moved through the fields. Ethan didn't rush her, didn't push her into anything. He simply showed up, patient, kind, and attentive, a constant presence in the slow rhythm of her days. And though Lena still struggled with her thoughts about beauty and worth, she began to see glimmers of something she had longed for: recognition, appreciation, and the possibility of love that valued her heart above all else. She didn't know what the future held, but with Ethan's quiet presence, the days felt brighter, and the heavy weight of self-doubt began to lift, just enough to let her imagine that maybe, just maybe, she was enough. The evening sky was painted in soft shades of orange and lavender as Lena walked toward the river, her boots leaving gentle impressions in the damp soil. The day had been long, with the sun beating down on the fields, but her mind was restless. Thoughts that had been tucked away all her life now surfaced quietly, like whispers in the wind. She carried a small blanket with her and planned to sit by the water, letting the gentle flow of the river calm her. Ethan was already there when she arrived, sitting on a large rock by the water's edge. He looked up as she approached and smiled, a simple gesture that somehow made her heart flutter. "Hey," he said softly. "I thought I might find you here." "Hi," Lena replied, her voice almost a whisper. She set the blanket down carefully and sat beside him, feeling the cool grass beneath her. For a moment, they simply watched the river flow, the water catching the last light of the day as it moved lazily along its path. The air was filled with the soft hum of nature, birds calling in the distance, the rustle of leaves in the wind, and the occasional splash of a fish breaking the surface. For days, Lena had been holding on to a secret she wasn't sure she was ready to share, but something about Ethan's presence, his patient and gentle attention, made her feel safe. She felt a tug in her chest, an urge to speak the words she had buried for so long. Finally, she took a deep breath, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of the blanket. I need to tell you something, she began, her voice trembling slightly. Ethan turned to look at her, his eyes calm and encouraging. It's hard for me to talk about, but I think I should. He nodded, silently urging her to continue. Lena's shoulders hunched slightly as she looked at the river. All my life I've felt invisible. Like no one really notices me, or if they do, it's only for a little while. I've always thought I'm not beautiful enough. Not like the other girls in town. Not like the people everyone seems to admire. Her voice cracked, then a single tear escaped, rolling down her cheek. She quickly brushed it away, embarrassed. Ethan reached over gently, placing his hand over hers. "Lena," he said softly. "You don't have to hide that from me. I'm listening." She took a shaky breath and continued. "I know it's silly. I work hard, I take care of the animals, I help my family, but inside, I feel small. I feel like no one could ever see me as someone special, someone worth noticing." Her eyes met his, searching for a trace of judgment, but all she found was warmth, understanding, and patience. "You know," Ethan said quietly, "I think a lot of people feel that way about themselves, but that doesn't make it true. There's nothing silly about what you're feeling, and I can tell you, I've noticed you. Not just how you look, but how you care for everything around you. How you work, how you laugh, how you really see the world. That's beauty, Lena. Real beauty." Lena blinked, unsure how to respond. The words felt strange, almost foreign, because she had spent so long believing the opposite. No one had ever spoken to her like that before, with such quiet honesty. She wanted to believe him, but old fears and insecurities held her back. I don't know if I can believe that," she admitted softly. Ethan squeezed her hand gently. "That's okay. You don't have to believe it right now, but I want you to try, just a little. Because it's true. You're beautiful in ways that matter. And I'm not the only one who would see it if you let yourself be seen." The river's gentle flow seemed to echo his words, and Lena felt a warmth spread through her chest. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine that maybe she wasn't invisible. Maybe someone could see her for who she truly was, not just what she looked like or how the world had taught her to measure herself. "I've spent so long thinking no one would ever notice me," she whispered, her voice breaking again. "And even when people do notice, it doesn't feel real. But when you look at me, it feels different. It feels like you actually see me. Not the outside, but me." Ethan's gaze softened, and he gave her hand another gentle squeeze. "I do see you, Lena. And not just because I think you're pretty. I see your heart, your kindness, your strength. That's what matters. That's what I noticed first." She felt a tear escape, this time without shame, and let it fall freely. It was as if years of hidden sadness were slipping away, moment by moment, river by river. She felt lighter, though her heart still trembled with the vulnerability of being seen so fully. For a long while, they simply sat there, the silence between them comfortable, filled with unspoken understanding. Lena leaned back on the blanket, her eyes tracing the clouds as they drifted slowly across the sky. She realized that for the first time in a long while, she could speak her truth without fear. And even more, she realized that someone could hear it. Someone could hold it gently without judgment. Ethan finally spoke again, his voice soft but steady. You don't have to rush into feeling any certain way about yourself. Just know this. I'm here. I see you, really see you, and I'm not going anywhere. Those words wrapped around Lena like a warm blanket, comforting and real. She let herself believe, just for a moment, that maybe she was enough. Maybe the quiet strength she had always carried, the kindness she had shown in small, unnoticed ways, was enough. Maybe, just maybe, someone could love her for who she truly was. Over the next few days, Lena found herself thinking about that moment by the river. She remembered the way Ethan's hand had felt over hers, the way his voice had been steady and patient. She began to notice little changes in herself, small sparks of confidence that had been absent for years. She smiled more easily while working in the fields. She laughed at her own small mistakes instead of feeling embarrassed. She even caught herself standing a little taller, feeling a quiet pride in her efforts and care. And still, she knew she had a long way to go. Insecurities didn't disappear overnight. But for the first time, Lena felt that maybe she didn't have to face them alone. Someone could see her, understand her, and remind her of her worth when she forgot. It was a gentle, steady kind of love, one that didn't rush or demand. It was the kind of love that made her want to take small steps toward believing in herself, one day at a time. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Lena and Ethan walked back toward the ranch together. Their steps were slow and easy, the quiet companionship between them comforting and familiar. Lena's thoughts wandered, no longer heavy with doubt, but curious and hopeful. She imagined a future where she could see herself as Ethan saw her, not just the surface, but the heart within. When they reached the edge of the pasture, Ethan paused and looked at her. You know, he said gently, I'm glad you shared that with me today. It wasn't easy, I can tell, but I'm proud of you for trusting me. Lena felt her chest swell with a mixture of relief and gratitude. Thank you, she whispered. I've never told anyone like that before. It feels lighter somehow. Ethan smiled, a small, encouraging smile. That's because it is. Sometimes, just letting someone see your heart can make a world of difference. That night, Lena went to bed with a quiet sense of peace she hadn't known in years. The river, the sky, the gentle words of Ethan, all of it lingered in her mind, wrapping around her thoughts like a soft embrace.
She still had doubts, and she still had fears, but the heavy weight of them had shifted just enough to let hope enter.
For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to imagine a life where she could be loved truly and completely for who she was. And in that quiet, fragile moment, Lena realized something important. Being seen for who you are, being loved for your heart and soul, is far more beautiful than anything the world measures on the outside. The days after Lena's confession passed quietly, yet something inside her had begun to change. The sun still rose over the rolling plains, painting the fields with the same soft gold light, but Lena noticed the world differently. She noticed the way the morning dew sparkled like tiny stars on the grass, the way the horses' coats gleamed in the sunlight, and the way the wind whispered through the trees in gentle patterns. It was as if her heart had opened a small crack, letting in light that had been absent for far too long. Ethan continued to appear in her daily routine, not with grand gestures or overwhelming words, but with small, steady moments that mattered more than anything else. Sometimes he would arrive with coffee in a simple tin mug, sitting quietly while she fed the animals. Sometimes he would offer to carry heavy buckets, though he never insisted, leaving her the choice to accept help or continue on her own. His presence was calm, patient, and unhurried, allowing Lena the space to breathe and gradually let herself be seen. One afternoon, while they were mending a fence together, Ethan paused to look at Lena. "You've grown so much in the past few weeks," he said softly, his voice filled with genuine admiration. "Not just in how you do your work, but there's a strength in you that's hard to miss." Lena looked at him, surprised. She had noticed a small change in herself. She smiled more easily, laughed without hiding it, and sometimes even felt proud of her efforts. But she didn't expect Ethan to notice so clearly. A warmth spread through her chest, gentle and steady. "Thank you," she whispered. I'm trying." "You've always had it," Ethan said with a smile. "It's just coming through now. I can see it, and I hope you're starting to see it too." His words lingered in her mind long after he had left. That evening, Lena sat on the porch, looking out over the fields. She thought about her life, her insecurities, and the long-held belief that she wasn't beautiful enough. But now, she began to see that beauty wasn't measured by mirrors or by the way others whispered in town. It was measured by the quiet kindness in her actions, the strength in her hands, and the honesty in her heart. Slowly, she allowed herself to imagine that maybe she had been beautiful all along, in ways that truly mattered. In the days that followed, Lena started noticing small, joyful changes in herself. She laughed more freely while feeding the animals, sang softly as she worked in the fields, and even allowed herself to look in the mirror without immediately criticizing what she saw. There were moments when old insecurities tried to creep back in, but she would remember Ethan's steady gaze, his quiet admiration, and the gentle words that had reminded her of her worth. And in those moments, she would push the doubts aside, focusing instead on the small, meaningful beauty she carried inside. One morning, as Lena was preparing to lead the horses to the pasture, she saw Ethan approaching from the path along the fence line. He carried a basket of fresh bread and fruit, a simple gesture that made her heart lift. "Morning," he said softly, setting the basket down near the gate. "Thought you might like a little snack before starting your work." Lena smiled, feeling a small flutter in her chest. "Thank you," she said, her voice warm. "That's thoughtful of you." He shrugged lightly, as if it were nothing, though she knew better. "I like doing things that make you smile. It's easy." They ate together in quiet companionship, the sounds of the morning filling the space between them, the low neigh of the horses, the rustle of the trees, and the distant calls of birds. Lena realized that she no longer felt the heavy weight of self-doubt pressing against her chest. Instead, there was a gentle lightness, a feeling that someone truly cared, someone saw her heart, and it mattered. After breakfast, they worked together in the fields, repairing fences, feeding animals, and carrying water. Lena noticed how naturally their partnership had developed. They didn't need words for every action. There was an understanding in the rhythm of their work, a quiet harmony that made the hard labor feel lighter. She felt seen and appreciated in a way she had never known before, and slowly that appreciation began to extend inward. That afternoon, while they were resting under a large oak tree, Lena spoke quietly, almost to herself. "I've spent so many years thinking I wasn't enough, that no one would ever notice me for who I really am. But it's different now. Being around you, it makes me want to see myself differently." Ethan looked at her, his eyes soft and encouraging. "That's the best kind of change," he said. "Not because someone tells you you're enough, but because you start to see it for yourself. You don't need anyone to prove it. You already have it inside. Lena felt a warmth spreading through her chest, a mix of gratitude and wonder. She had always believed that her value was measured by how others saw her, by attention or compliments. But Ethan's words reminded her that true worth comes from within, from kindness, courage, and the way one cares for the world. In the following weeks, Lena began to embrace her uniqueness more fully. She experimented with small things, letting her hair fall freely, choosing the colors of her clothes based on what she liked, rather than what others might think, and smiling at herself in the mirror without immediately criticizing. Each small act was a step towards self-recognition, and each step brought a quiet joy she had never experienced before. Ethan continued to be a steady presence, offering encouragement without pressure. Sometimes he would notice her laughter, sometimes her focus while working with the animals, and sometimes just the quiet way she observed the world around her. Each observation felt like a small reminder that she mattered, that her heart, her spirit, and her actions were seen and valued. One evening, as the sky blazed with the colors of sunset, Lena and Ethan sat atop a gentle hill overlooking the fields. The wind ruffled her hair, and she felt a deep sense of peace. "I think I'm starting to understand something," she said softly, her eyes tracing the horizon. "Beauty, it's not about what people see on the outside. It's about how you live, how you care, and how you love. And maybe, just maybe, I've been beautiful all along without knowing it." Ethan reached over, gently taking her hand. "You have, and I hope you never forget it." Her heart swelled, and for the first time, Lena didn't try to shrink away from her feelings. She let herself sit in the moment, feeling warmth, recognition, and quiet happiness. The heavy weight of self-doubt had lifted just enough to allow her to breathe, to smile, and to imagine a life filled with possibility. Over the next several days, Lena noticed that the small gestures of kindness she shared with the world seemed brighter, more confident. She greeted neighbors with a genuine smile, laughed freely at minor mishaps, and found herself noticing the little beauties in everyday life. The way sunlight fell on a horse's mane, the pattern of clouds in the sky, and the way a gentle breeze could lift the spirits. Ethan remained a constant, gentle presence, never rushing her or expecting anything, simply showing her that being seen, appreciated, and valued was possible. Through his patient kindness, Lena learned that healing doesn't happen all at once. It happens in quiet, small steps, in moments of understanding, and in the gentle reminder that someone believes in you even when you struggle to believe in yourself. One afternoon, as they walked back toward the ranch after tending to the animals, Lena paused to take a deep breath, feeling the wind on her face. She realized that she was no longer defined by the doubts she had carried for so long. She could see herself, imperfect and unique, and recognize the value within her. And she knew, quietly but firmly, that she had someone by her side who would continue to remind her of that truth, gently, patiently, and without expectation. That evening, Lena sat on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. She thought about how far she had come, not just in learning to care for the land, but in learning to care for herself. She smiled softly, feeling a quiet sense of gratitude. Life was not perfect, and insecurities still lingered, but the heavy burden of them had lifted. For the first time in years, she could imagine a future where she felt truly seen, valued, and even loved. And in that quiet moment, as the sky turned to shades of deep blue and the first stars appeared, Lena realized something she had longed for but never allowed herself to feel. She was enough. Not because someone else said so, not because she met the world's standards, but because she had found the courage to see her own worth. And in that realization, a new chapter of her life quietly began, one filled with hope, healing, and the gentle promise of love that valued her heart above all else. The morning air was crisp and fresh, carrying the scent of dew-soaked grass and the promise of a new day. Lena stepped outside, taking a deep breath that filled her lungs with the cool clarity of the plains. She felt lighter than she had in years, as if the worries and doubts that had long weighed on her chest were slowly melting away. The world seemed brighter, not because it had changed, but because she was finally beginning to see herself with new eyes. Ethan was already in the field, checking on the horses and moving quietly among the fences. When he noticed Lena approaching, he smiled warmly, tipping his hat in greeting. "Good morning," he said. "Ready for the day?" "Morning," Lena replied, returning the smile without hesitation. There was an ease in her voice, a calm confidence that had grown steadily over the past weeks. She felt a sense of belonging in a way she never had before. This land, the animals, the quiet rhythm of life, it was all part of her world. But now, she was part of it fully, not hidden behind walls of doubt. Together they worked in the fields, their movements synchronized without effort. Lena noticed how much she enjoyed the simplicity of their routine, feeding the horses, mending fences, carrying water, and sharing quiet conversations. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was real, meaningful, and grounding. She realized that life's value wasn't measured in attention or praise, but in purpose, care, and connection. Later that afternoon, they paused at the edge of the hill overlooking the pastures. The sun hung low, casting long, golden shadows across the fields. Lena leaned against the fence, letting the warmth of the sunlight wash over her face. For the first time, she felt a sense of contentment that had nothing to do with others' opinions or comparisons. She was proud of who she was, proud of the work she did, and proud of the heart she had nurtured. Ethan watched her quietly, sensing the change within her. "You've come a long way," he said softly. "Not just in what you do, but in how you see yourself. It's beautiful to watch." Lena turned to him, a gentle smile on her lips. "I think I'm finally starting to understand what you meant," she replied. "Beauty, it's not about being noticed by everyone. It's about being true to yourself, caring for what matters, and letting the right people see who you are." Ethan's gaze softened, and he reached out, taking her hand in his. "Exactly," he said. "And I hope you know, I see you. Not just now, but always. You've been beautiful all along, Lena, and I've waited a long time to tell you that." Her heart swelled with emotion, a warmth that spread through her chest like sunlight. She had carried the belief that she wasn't enough for so long, but now, with Ethan's words and steady presence, she felt seen, valued, and cherished in a way she had never imagined possible. For the first time, she allowed herself to fully believe it. As the days passed, Lena found herself embracing life more openly. She laughed freely, shared her thoughts without hesitation, and even allowed herself moments of quiet joy that had once seemed impossible. She cared for the animals and land with renewed passion, not out of duty or expectation, but because she found joy in nurturing life and seeing things grow. Ethan remained a gentle and constant presence. He didn't need to speak often. His actions, his attention, and his quiet encouragement said more than words ever could. They spent long afternoons together in the fields, sharing stories, watching the clouds drift by, and simply enjoying the peaceful rhythm of the plains. Each day, Lena felt her confidence and sense of worth grow, not because the world had changed, but because she had learned to see herself through a lens of love and acceptance. One evening, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky in deep oranges and purples. Lena and Ethan climbed the hill together, sitting side by side on a large rock. The wind ruffled their hair, and the vast expanse of the land stretched before them, endless and full of possibility. Lena rested her hand on Ethan's, feeling the steady warmth of his touch. "I never thought I'd feel like this," she said softly, her voice carrying a mix of wonder and gratitude. "I used to think I would always be invisible, that no one would ever see me for who I truly am. But now, I feel seen. I feel enough." Ethan looked at her, his eyes full of gentle certainty. "You are enough," he said simply. "You've always been enough. I'm just glad you're starting to see it too." They sat in silence for a while, letting the world around them settle. The gentle sounds of the evening, the distant call of a bird, the whisper of wind through the grass, the soft murmur of the river, were comforting and steady. Lena felt a quiet happiness she had never known, a sense of belonging not just in the world, but in her own heart. In the following weeks, Lena's life continued to change in subtle, meaningful ways. She found herself speaking more confidently with neighbors, sharing smiles and laughter freely, and taking pride in her work on the ranch. She no longer measured herself against others or compared her worth to superficial standards. Instead, she focused on what mattered most: her heart, her actions, and the people who truly cared for her. Ethan and Lena's bond grew stronger with each passing day. They spent evenings watching the sunset together, mornings tending to the field side by side, and quiet nights talking about hopes, dreams, and the small joys of life. There was a rhythm to their connection, a steady flow of understanding, respect, and gentle affection that required no rush, no grand gestures, just the simple presence of one another. One day, as they stood at the edge of the pasture watching the horses graze, Lena felt a deep sense of peace. She realized that the insecurities that had once dominated her thoughts no longer held power over her. She could see herself clearly now, not perfect, not flawless, but whole, valued, and beautiful in ways that truly mattered. "I never thought I could feel this way," Lena said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I would always carry the weight of my doubts, but now it feels different. Light, free, like I can finally breathe." Ethan turned to her, a gentle smile on his lips. "That's what happens when you let yourself be seen, when you allow someone to remind you of your worth and help you believe in it yourself. You've done the hard part, Lena. You've opened your heart, and now it's ready for the life you deserve." Lena's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of quiet joy. She had spent so long wishing for someone to see her, to value her, to remind her of her worth. And now she realized that someone had, and not only that, she had begun to see herself in a way that matched the love and respect she had longed for. As the sun finally dipped below the horizon, casting the fields in soft twilight, Lena and Ethan walked back toward the ranch together. The air was cool, and the stars began to twinkle above, small points of light that mirrored the hope blossoming in her heart. Lena felt a deep sense of gratitude for the land she loved, for the life she had built, and for the person who had quietly shown her the power of being seen, appreciated, and loved. That night, as Lena lay in bed, she thought about how far she had come. She remembered the days when she had whispered to herself, "I'm not beautiful enough," and how heavy and true those words had felt. But now she understood that beauty was never about being noticed by everyone or fitting into a narrow standard. beauty was about courage, kindness, love, and the way a heart carries itself through the world. And in that quiet reflection, Lena felt a soft certainty settle in her chest. She was enough. She had always been enough. And with Ethan by her side, she could face the future with hope, joy, and a heart open to love and all the possibilities that life held. The ranch, the plains, and the quiet rhythm of everyday life had not changed, but Lena had. She had learned to see herself, to accept herself, and to embrace the love and recognition she deserved. And as she drifted off to sleep that night, the soft sounds of the land surrounding her, she knew that a new chapter had begun, one filled with hope, healing, and the quiet, steady promise of a life where she could finally feel fully seen and fully loved.